Hey guys, welcome to the JondaKnows Show. We are back today with a very exciting episode. I'm here today with John Ursin, and if you are joining us again, welcome. If you're joining us for the first time, we're so happy you're here. Please make sure that you subscribe to the channel and you like and share the content to anyone that you feel could benefit from that. Now, I mentioned today we are here with John Ursin. John is the managing partner of Schenck, Price, Smith & King. John, you're coming to us today from New Jersey. Introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about your background.
Sure. Yep. I'm coming from New Jersey. I'm the managing partner of Schenck Price. We're a 90 attorney firm, 115 years old here in New Jersey, and my practice is almost exclusively focused on representing closely held businesses, either through family offices or as outside general counsel to companies.
Fantastic. How long have you done that, John?
Time flies. I'm at about 32 years now.
All right. You know, you mentioned you're joining us from New Jersey, and our listeners, of course, are all across the country. So just spend a moment. Can you work with businesses and clients that are not a resident of New Jersey?
Sure. So our firm is very focused regionally on New Jersey, New York, and Pennsylvania, but our clients have business interests across the whole country, and we regularly work in virtually every state and internationally.
Okay, fantastic. Because as I was about to say, as we all know, and that's not a fair statement, but if you don't know, laws are different in various states. And so it's really important that when you are seeking counsel from an attorney, that you make sure that they are familiar with the laws in the state where you reside or where you're purchasing property or business. So you mentioned you've been doing this for a while. What keeps you going? Why do you wake up every morning and love doing this?
So I think I've developed an interesting niche in the law because although we're lawyers, we're very involved with the human relations. We're very involved with the business side of it. So we often feel like we're part of the team running the business. So we participate in the business's success and the transitions and the succession plans, and we represent families through multiple generations, and that's rewarding.
It's kind of like you're a member of the family, huh?
You on certain companies and certain clients, you definitely become an insider in the family.
Yes, I would agree. And one of the things at JondaKnows that we really love to do and encourage our clients to invite us to do is to partner with their entire financial team. And so whether that's an attorney, whether that's a CPA, it's really important for all three of us, you know, to be on the same page so that we can work together to reach their goals. And so along that lines, I want to talk about today, you know, the ownership of assets is so important. It affects the everything from taxes to inheritance. One of the things that I see on an individual basis a lot, John, is people adding their adult children to their assets for one reason or another. They might go ahead and, for example, place their name or even transfer the deed, you know, to an adult child so that they make sure that the family home stays in the family, et cetera. And although we're not going to dive deep on this today, but that is a whole hornet's nest in and of itself, as especially if that is a highly appreciated asset. So again, if there's a large capital gain in that family home, when you transfer that deed, you transfer the cost basis. And the benefit of not doing that would obviously be to let it pass at your death. And then there's a step up in cost basis. So it's a little different. There are some similarities, but it's a little different from a business standpoint. So what I would like you to do is to spend a moment and let's talk about the various ways to own a business. If someone's going to open a business, they have lots of options. Take us through those and give us a brief description of each.
Sure. So anybody who starts a business, might, often get the business off the ground as a sole proprietor because it was a quick thing. They came up with an idea and they begin. But as soon as a business starts, we encourage everybody to really look at the structure. So you could have a sole proprietor where it's just in your name and you're the owner. You could have a partnership where you work with one or more people that you can And what happens sometimes is people start a partnership and then they don't do any type of governance document, and so it becomes a little bit of a free-form partnership.
Mm-hmm.
We don't recommend that. You can have a partnership with a partnership agreement. Sometimes two businesses can have a joint venture together. But then the other things that people hear a lot about, you have limited liability companies and
Yes.
then corporations.
Yes.
And in corporations, you have sort of two different levels where it's closely held, an S corporation or a C corporation, where the corporate entity is the central figure. And those have different tax consequences.
Thank you for describing each of those. Now, I know you can move amongst those. You can make changes. Tell our listeners today if they find themselves in one situation and need to move to another, how they might need to go about that.
Well, that happens a lot, that somebody has one business and then the business either has a subsidiary or partners with somebody, or there becomes different layers in businesses. So there's often reasons to create a corporate ladder of entities. And the first and most obvious reason is to segregate risk, right? So a certain business, an apartment building has a certain amount of risk, a contractor business has a certain amount of risk, a sales business might, and if you had multiple types of businesses, you might segregate them in different entities. And then oftentimes for tax reasons, you want them tied together by a holding company.
Exactly. I'm glad you mentioned that, because that was going to be a follow-up question for me. A lot of the times when we are working with business owners, there's definitely strategy involved in structuring a company. And when I speak of strategy, I most often, you do certainly want to protect yourself from a liability standpoint, but one of the hot topics that we, want to minimize is tax. And so you touched on that. Do you want to elaborate a little bit on being strategic and how you structure companies and holding companies and possibly even trusts so that you can minimize tax implications?
Sure. So, you mentioned before that working with a team is the important thing. It's one of the things that we emphasize right from the beginning, that obviously, that you start with the right lawyer, you have the right accountant, the right financial advisor, the right insurance broker, and working as a team, you can often figure out what levels are going to have the best tax benefit and where the write-offs are going to come. And you certainly want to match up places where you're going to have write-offs and places where you're going to have income. And that can be in a corporate structure, up a corporate family tree. And it can certainly be in trusts. And you mentioned earlier as well, working across the country. And these days, when people come to us with unique questions, often the solution is found by moving across the country. You can situate a business in different places depending on the
Yes.
type of business, and often the tax savings or efficiency can be dramatically different.
Thank you for pointing that out. So, in a nutshell, or very simplistic way to say that is, you want to make sure you have your ducks in a row before you open your business. You want to do your research and you want to have your strategy in place. Again, we did speak that you can change some of those things after you get into them. I'm not. Obviously, it would be easier if we set out on that journey in the right direction from the get-go. But certainly, working with what I would call a seasoned attorney is going to be extremely advantageous. Now,
And
another thing that we work with our clients here at JondaKnows, and you do as well, talk to us a little bit about an exit strategy for a business. We've just talked about, hey, let's get open. Now all of a sudden we want to talk about an exit strategy, but let's touch on that.
Sure. So two things that we emphasize, that's a bit of a segue, is you do the planning, as you mentioned right in the beginning. We encourage people to have regular checkups with their team,
Yes,
whether it's every 3 years, every 5 years, because things change. The business
absolutely.
grows, the dynamic changes, and we encourage that. But in those checkups leading up to your question, people, when they reach a certain age, we want them to start thinking about what the ultimate goal is. Is the ultimate goal a liquidity event? Do they want
Yes.
the business bought out while they're still alive to
Mhm.
use the income for their retirement? Do they want to fade out of the business and continue to collect income from the business and pass it on. Sometimes it's pass it on to employees, sometimes it's to pass it on to a family member, or is it a straight transition to a family member? But knowing what the asset is worth over time, that's part of the checkup that you do with your team. That's why you need a broad team and people that can advise you. You need the broad team to tell you about the capital markets. Is your business worth more or less now? Is it increasing in value? What can you do to increase it in value? When is a good time to sell? And then take into consideration all the tax consequences, and then dovetail that into your retirement plan, right? Because the two things have to work together.
Absolutely.
So yeah, we talk about those things, constantly with our clients and encourage these periodic checkups so that we can keep reviewing the plan and fine tune it as people age.
Fantastic. And there's a couple of tools that we use here at JondaKnows, and I think in our pre-interview, you mentioned that you're familiar with them. I think two very important levels of protection in a business would be key man insurance. And also buy-sell agreements, and actually funding both of those. I'm laughing, and I see you smiling as well, because I have run into a handful of folks who have those agreements in place, but they aren't funded. So spend a moment on, strategically using key man insurance and buy-sell agreements as part of potentially an exit strategy.
Sure. So it's both as part of an exit strategy at some point. But what we find is that when people come to start a business, people are very aware that startup businesses have a high failure rate and they're concerned about the risk. We find sometimes that they don't plan for success. And so when you don't plan for success, you're not thinking about all the things that could happen. So we use the 5 Ds a lot, that death, disability, divorce, disagreement, and distress.
Very
And
good.
key man insurance becomes a key part of those things, because just trying to illustrate one of them, if somebody if you have 3 key people in the business and one tragically passes away, how are you going to buy out that person's estate? Because you don't want that person's executor or heirs to now be a part of your business and sit at the
Absolutely.
table and vote on things. So the
Absolutely.
key man insurance provides the funding source so that you're able to buy out the estate, maintain your business without hurting it financially, and continue on. And we talk about how each of those scenarios, in death, disability, divorce, and disagreement, that you might fund a solution so that it doesn't end up killing the business.
Absolutely. And, we're not going to dive into this today because we don't have the time, but certainly life insurance is an option for funding that, and it has huge leverage depending upon, again, the value of that key person and what that
Yes.
might look like for the business. I want to spend we have a couple more minutes, and I want to spend those on trust. Let's talk a moment about for our audience, just go ahead and touch on the difference between, because there's a plethora of trust, and they do just across the board, they do many, many things. But at the core, let's just do the difference between a revocable trust and an irrevocable trust.
Sure. So, very much as it sounds in the definition, a revocable trust is something that the grantor sets up and then has options along the way to change it or even withdraw property from it. Whereas an irrevocable trust is irreversible. Oftentimes it can be modified, but the property that's then placed in the trust cannot be taken out of the trust.
All right. So you would work with a trustee in an irrevocable trust. Is that correct?
Yeah, so you mentioned before, oftentimes trying to coordinate an asset with relatives or
Mm-hmm.
with other key people, and oftentimes, one of the trusts, revocable or irrevocable, becomes the solution, because you can give a certain amount of certainty to a child who's working in a business without actually transferring the property to them and losing control or losing the later tax benefit.
Fantastic. Wow, this 15 minutes has been jam-packed full of good stuff. Tell our listeners how the best way to get in touch with you if they would like to learn more about you and working with you.
Sure. Probably the easiest way is we have a simple email address, which is spsk.com. We're here in New Jersey. My profile is on the website, and we'd certainly be interested in hearing from any of your listeners and seeing if we could help any of them going forward.
And do you offer a complimentary review, or is there a fee for your first session?
No, I've always thought that picking your lawyer is a very important selection, and I always have a free first consultation so someone can get to know me a little bit. I can get to know them, and we see if we're a good fit.
Well, we are aligned in that as well at JondaKnows. We welcome anyone to schedule a free consultation with us. It's very important that, as John points out, that you be a good fit with your financial team, whether it's a financial advisor, insurance advisor, attorney, or CPA. So that's all we have for you today in this episode. Thanks so much for joining us, and we'll see you in the next one.